My name is Jeff Morgan. I'm from Dallas, Texas. I want to thank the person from the Fort Worth Weekly who wrote this article. It's called Breaking Point. The subtitle is What's Fueling Unprecedented Levels of Anger with Tarrant County Family Courts. This again is done by the Fort Worth Weekly. It's published online July 27, 2022. This article talks about the Tarrant County Family Courts, and the Tarrant County Family Courts are just an example of the family court corruption that we have in the entire state of Texas. Tarrant County Family Courts do rank up near the top, though, as far as corruption, but they are not alone in the category of corruption in family courts in the state of Texas. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this article and add a couple of comments as I can. No area of our local government draws as much ire and mistrust as family courts. Seemingly countless blogs, YouTube channels, and Facebook groups are dedicated to scrutinizing the decisions of Tarrant County Family Court judges that are elected every 4 years and their personally appointed associate judges. Critics of Texas child support program point to federal incentives that ensure people pay their child support. For every dollar Texas spends on monitoring and enforcing child support, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services contributes 66 cents to the state. Nationally, the federal government disperses around $6 billion to states as part of the incentive. Numerous parents see the federal involvement as a floating system that is possibly dated because women are making almost as much as men in the workplace when measuring similar jobs, and because increasing numbers of fathers are taking on 50-50 custody agreements. And I would add when that is permitted, because a lot of people don't want to see 50-50 custody agreements because that would undermine the rationale for child support and also decrease the amount of federal funds coming into the states. That's why in Texas we don't have 50-50, we have almost 50-50. We just have to create a little inequality that will help justify our collection of child support payments and the collection of federal incentives through the Title 4D program. These men still have a long way to go. Nationally, 80% of parents, I think it's 82.5, but about 80% of parents awarded primary custody are women based on the U.S. Census Bureau data. For Texas, we have seen the records from the Attorney General's office. It's closer to about 88%. And about 88% of the time, mothers get primary custody of the children. And that's even in spite of the fact that our so-called Texas Family Code says that there will be no discrimination on the basis of sex or marital status. So in 88% of the time, mothers get primary custody, and about 6.5% of the time, fathers get primary custody, and I think it's at about 5.5% of the time, somebody else gets primary custody, like an agency, a grandparent, a relative, somebody like that. So in every type of a divorce case, only 6.5% of fathers get primary custody. Now, of course, the best thing for children is to be reared in an intact family with both parents, but as far as the research shows, the thing that best replicates two parents living in the same household is a 50-50 sharing of parental time with the children. To dig further into the accusations against family court judges who have the unenviable job of determining which parent receives primary custody and whether parental rights are reduced or terminated, we spoke with one Colleyville father whose son recently died of cancer. Rulings by two family court judges in Tarrant County played a role in his son's death, the father alleges. Now, with this paragraph, I'd like to just say a couple of things. Number one, why do we even have family court judges determining this? Many times we have the issue of no-fault divorce, which I believe is a bigger issue, but if we grant no-fault divorce, why are we trying to therefore find fault with a parent over his or her parenting style? No-fault divorce means there's no fault. From my perspective, if you have no-fault divorce, it is absolutely absurd to say that, well, you can't have 50-50 shared parenting. If you have no-fault divorce, there's no fault. So why is somebody's rights to their children being taken away is the question that I have. And I also don't know why even family court judges, strangers, and when we say family court judges, we have to remember this. These are strangers to this particular situation. It's often a cookie-cutter situation. Somebody appears before the judge, and the judge puts on his black robe, and he's got his child custody evaluators, and he's got the attorneys that are arguing their cases back and forth. They have no clue what the relationship has been like between father and child, between mother and child. They have no clue of the dynamics. They don't even know if the marriage should even be terminated. Maybe the best thing to do would be to say, wait a minute, you two go back to marriage counseling because your marriage should not even be going through divorce right now. But judges won't do that. There's really no findings of facts, no conclusions of law. They just come along and they hear from this person, they hear from that person. This person may have given the judge a lot more money, so maybe that person gets 60 or 75% of his or her opinion in the judge's ear. This person did not give that much, so it doesn't quite count for the same amount. That's the reality in our courts today. That is the reality. But anyway, I don't think that the family courts, the anti-family courts, the family destruction courts should even have jurisdiction in the majority of these cases. Oftentimes, two people get married in a church. A pastor, a priest, a rabbi, an imam marry them, and a judge divorces them. This is crazy. People that enter into the types of marriages where it is a religious-based marriage, they should be able to have some type of protections to their marriage. One person should not be unilaterally able to stop a marriage. But anyway, again, I'm digressing here from the idea that these family court judges have the unenviable position of determining not only primary custody and whether parental rights are terminated or reduced. What is going on here? Is there any criminal activity that's taking place? Often what happens is in these cases is that one parent alleges something. One parent wants to move on with his life or her life and wants to minimize or erase the other parent from the children's life because that parent is now an inconvenience to him or to her. Still, the children need both parents. So, but the judges, they have this unenviable position. Well, if it's so unenviable, make it presumption of 50-50 shared parenting. That would be the natural thing that should occur in these divorce cases. Anyway, so the situation in particular that this person is talking about is with David Henderson. And David had a son, Corbin Henderson. He died in July. Earlier this month, he died from cancer. It was an atrocious case. The judges involved made some absolutely horrendous decisions. I believe they reversed some of their decisions simply because the public got wind of some of this stuff and they realized this was a disaster that they were facing. And that's exactly what we need to be doing, is showing the disaster of these anti-family courts and these judges. So it continues on here, remembering Corbin Henderson. David Henderson frequently relives memories of his son. The boy was a younger version of his father, the dad told me. The 14-year-old saw the similarities too. If we were the same age, Corbin Henderson once told his dad, we'd be best friends. Did you hear what he just said? His son said, if we were the same age, we would be best friends. And yet a judge, an anti-family judge, tried to kick David Henderson out of his kid's life. And you'll hear more about that as we go forward. Through podcasts and live stream videos, David's story has drawn condemnation from parents across North Texas at the rulings of Tarrant County's 332nd District Court. Presiding judges James Munford and Associate Judge Jeffrey Kaitcer worked in concert, David alleges, to allow Corbin's mother, allegedly, to remove their ill son from effective treatment at Cook's Children's Healthcare System 3 years ago and place him in an experimental treatment trial in New York City. More recently, the judges denied David and his family access to Corbin while the boy was in hospice at his mother's home throughout June. I think that Munford and Kaitcer are largely responsible for his death. Judge James Munford, Judge Jeffrey Kaitcer are largely responsible for the death of Corbin. 14-year-old Corbin alleges father David Henderson. I believe that Munford and Kaitcer imprisoned him in a house that he did not want to be imprisoned in and kept me out as if me or my dying son had done something wrong. Corbin died on July the 2nd. David, the father who maintained nearly 50-50 custody, said he lost substantial access to his terminally ill son throughout the last 2 years of treatment, as his ex-wife allegedly scheduled hospital visits during times when David normally had access to Corbin. And this is something that goes on all the time. One parent gets primary custody and they act as a gatekeeper. They want to erase the other parent from the child's life. So they will schedule things during the other parent's time of being with the child. And this is what was going on in this case right here. Well, I have medical treatments I have to take Corbin to. Oh, it's during your time. Oh, it didn't even occur to me. Oh, well, we have to take care of Corbin. An experimental treatment. They took him off a treatment that was working, that had a great chance of curing him, and they put him in an experimental trial in New York City, approved evidently by Judges James Munford and Jeffrey Kaitcer of Tarrant County Anti-Family Courts. The father said he didn't learn about the boy's placement in a hospice care from an attorney or his ex-wife, but rather from a mutual friend. So here's a father who's not being told about his son being in hospice care. For crying out loud, how abusive are these courts? And the unenviable position of determining jurisdiction or terminating or reducing parental rights, this frequently happens. It regularly happens. In fact, it's almost the exception that it doesn't happen that one person's rights are not reduced or terminated by an anti-family judge. Corbin's health allegedly declined during a 2-week period of possession, effectively a summer vacation, that the judges gave his mother, whose name we are concealing to protect her privacy. This is a very, very kind journalist. Obviously, I would like to say something different, but I'm not going to. I will respect the family at this point in time. The unfavorable timing left David with no court-ordered access to his ailing son. Judge Jeffrey Kaitcer, and I don't mind mentioning his name, it's well known who he is, Judge Jeffrey Kaitcer, initially restricted communication between the father and the son, who was on a steady stream of morphine. Judge Jeffrey Kaitcer gave the father 2 15-minute FaceTime sessions a day with his dying son. How about that? How compassionate that judge is. How magnificent he is. I mean, what a guy. He gave his father, he gave the father 2 15-minute FaceTime calls with a dying son, arguing that the courts didn't want to interfere with the boy's vacation. The whole thing was nonsense. Nobody is going on vacation, David recalled at the time. I was angered that anyone, including this anti-family court judge, this abusive judge, Jeffrey Kaitcer of Tarrant County Courts, that he would rule that I would have 2 15-minute sessions of FaceTime with my dying son. His son is dying. His son wanted to see his father, but Jeffrey Kaitcer, the wonderful judge out in Tarrant County, decided, oh, no, and here's the best, probably it was in the best interest of the child, that he has 2 15-minute FaceTime calls. We wouldn't want the father and the child to be together. That would not be in the best interest of the child. The best interest of the child is 2 15-minute FaceTime calls. Well, you know what? The public got whiff of this and started protesting and evidently started calling the court. And all of a sudden, Jeffrey Kaitcer realized, well, maybe it's not in the best interest of the child, is it? Jeffrey Kaitcer. To use that excuse that it was a vacation time was incomprehensible. Kaitcer, Judge Jeffrey Kaitcer, all but told me to sit down and shut up. Through subsequent hearings, David was able to visit Corbin 3 times a day for 1-hour visits. Kaitcer expanded that duration to 2 2-hour visits during the day with no access every 5th day. And as David Henderson said, he was a father 4 days out of 5. 5th day, he was not a father to his son. David appealed the decision to Judge Munford, but the court, they ended up falling after Corbin's death. So his son died, and he has to go through the appeal process. He's got to go and talk with another judge about, can I see my son? This is abuse. This is judicial abuse. I don't care what you say. There should be no immunity for this. This was abusive, and this is something that is incomprehensible. They all ran the clock out on purpose, David alleges. Jeffrey Kaitcer, James Munford, they all ran the clock out on purpose. The ex-wife, she ran the clock out on purpose. They did everything that they could to keep the father and the son separated, even though the son is dying. Even though the son wanted his father, they did everything that they could to run out the clock on purpose. No court, no anti-family judge should ever restrict a parent's access to their dying child, David said, adding that Corbin's parental grandparents were allowed to see their grandchild for only 90 minutes on Father's Day. So here another instance. Grandparents, if you aren't upset about this, you should be. Because in addition to Corbin not being able to see his father, except by FaceTime originally, the grandparents were allowed one 90-minute visit with their dying grandson. And this was by the magnificent order, the beneficial, just what a gracious order by Judge Jeffrey Kaitcer. This is despicable beyond all belief. And the fact that a mother would ask for something like that, if that's exactly what was going on, that is despicable too. And by the way, the law firm that I believe was representing her was the Kuntz Fuller Law Firm. One of, in my opinion, probably one of the most crooked law firms in the state. That is my opinion. Every time I visit court, I spend 10 to 15 grand, David said. I've spent over $200,000 in court. Why should a father or a mother have to spend $200,000 to have access to their child? Tell me that. There was no reason for this to take place, but this is a money-making scheme. And Kuntz Fuller knows that. The judges know that. I'm sure that Kuntz Fuller is probably donating to the judges. Maybe not these judges, but I do know that there's another judge up in Corbin County that Kuntz Fuller was throwing the reception for him, and then some type of a party for him, like a campaign thing for him. Kuntz Fuller party, Kuntz Fuller Law Firm was throwing a big reception for this wonderful judge, and I'm sure that probably when Kuntz Fuller attorneys appear in front of this judge, that judge might think, these people actually did some stuff for me. Maybe I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to them. And Kuntz Fuller has been known to be a crooked law firm by many people. It's not just my opinion, it's the opinion of many people. But here, they were milking a man out of money, $200,000. I really think that if Kuntz Fuller wanted to be an upright law firm, that they should look at how much money they should give back to the people that they have stolen money from through their fraudulent representation of these people. And there's plenty of cases with regard to that. I know of several. You always have the right to appeal because the associate judge is not elected. Oh, that's always nice. You can appeal the case because the associate judge is not elected. You can appeal. Someone will always be unsatisfied with the outcome. And here's another piece of garbage that they say. The fact that nobody's happy means we've made the right decision. Who came up with this nonsense? There's a whole books being written about coming to yes and agreeing with one another. Both parties should feel that's a win-win, not a lose-lose, or not one person wins at the expense of the other, and not that children always lose because one parent gets screwed out of something by an anti-family court judge who's paying attention to an attorney who's giving him a lot of money to help him with his campaign. This means you will try the same case twice and spend twice the money. That's the game. That is the fraudulent game. Say it's a criminal racket to a large degree, but it's been giving the appearance of actually being something legal and just and right. It is a racket. It's a criminal racket. It's an organization that should be disbanded. It's a cartel. David said Texas family courts will always favor certain parties as long as there are financial incentives for parents, lawyers, and judges to litigate endlessly in court, and that is absolutely true. There is no reason why anybody should have had to spend $200,000 just to see a son. And judges also disproportionately give something to one person, something to another person, and they say, well, it's a fair and right division. That's so full of crap. That's just what it is. Tarrant County is bad. Rockwall County is bad. Collin County is bad. Parker County is just as bad. Harris County is bad. We want to go through all the list of them. They're all pretty rotten and stinking. David said there is still an unfair presumption that the father is somehow less deserving of primary custody than the mother. And that basically, again, just comes from the records of the Attorney General of the state of Texas. We have the records. There's almost 1.5 million children that the Attorney General office says that they're taking care of, and about 88% of them, a little bit over 88%, have primary custody by the mother, about 6.5% primary custody by the father, and 5.5% by some agency or somebody else that's neither mother nor father. So I think that probably he is actually right about this when he says that there's still an unfair presumption that the father is somehow less deserving of primary custody than the mother. And if you listen to Texas anti-family lobbyists, Steve and Amy Bresnan, they will also all argue these things too. They'll call fathers, well, maybe he just doesn't want to pay child support, and he probably is a domestic terrorist. We have the tweets. with Amy Bresnan trying to suggest this. Somehow because a father wants 50-50, it's because he's a greedy something or another, or maybe even a domestic terrorist. And just do something. Now, Steve and Amy Bresnan, that I will talk much more about them in the future here. We've been doing our research on them. We will have some videos about them to show just how crooked they are. There's a lot to be said about this anti-family lobbyist organization. And then, of course, we have the law firms like Coons Fuller. I know of several cases. I've personally been there in person to see them. They are, in my opinion, one of the crookedest law firms that I have ever seen. And now maybe there are some that are more crooked. I don't know, but that would be really scraping the bottom of the barrel if that were the case. Anyway, as David says, this entire system needs to be changed, but that's never going to happen because there's way too much money being made. Now, David Henderson's son, Corbin, has died. And again, he never should have had to spend $200,000 trying to see his son. It never should have been that he gets 2 15-minute FaceTime calls a day with his dying son when his son wanted to see his father. It never should be that the mother should be able to say, well, I'm going to get to choose the vacation schedule. I'm going to get to do this. I'm going to get to do that. I'm going to make sure that my ex-husband is out of my children's life. She is acting as the terrorist, Amy Bresnan, not Mr. Henderson. And so anyway, I'm very glad that we finally have some people talking about our anti-family court system here. And I'm hoping that our legislators start to read some of this stuff, because we're not going away. The voices are getting louder and louder. And Larry O'Neill, I want to thank you out in Fort Worth, because you've been talking about this whole anti-family corruption industry for the last 2 months or so. Larry was a person who said, I had no idea this was so bad. And then he asked people to start sending him stories, and he was flooded with stories. Everybody's talking about this now. So we're hoping that this time maybe our legislature will get things right and start to rein in this abusive system. There's a lot of things that can be done, and I hope that our legislature has the backbone to do it. Anyway, that's it. David Henderson and Corbin, I'm so sorry for the loss for Corbin's grandparents. The same thing there as well. We will not let this go to rest. And by the way, we will be having a documentary coming out about this, so you'll be able to see this. We hope it's going to be Netflix or Amazon quality. We are not going to let this go to rest. Again, this happened in Texas. It happened in Tarrant County. It's something that our legislature has known has been going on. Our judiciary has known has been going on. Everybody knows this is going on, but nobody's been talking about this. We're not going to be silent anymore. So again, we hope that Corbin's death, as tragic as it was, will not be in vain. We hope you join us as far as purging this anti-family court corruption in the state of Texas and in Tarrant County. Thank you very much.